Stories number 1. My wife keeps wishing our kids had my features, and I finally snapped. I never thought I'd be the guy writing into Reddit about family drama, but here we are. I'm Ethan, 30M, and my wife is Lily, 28F. We've been married for about 6 years, and together for almost 10. We live in a quiet suburb outside of Boston, raising our little family. We've got 2 boys already, Mason 5 and Caleb 1, and Lily is currently pregnant with our 3rd son. For background, I'm blonde with blue eyes, classic Northern European features. Lily is Chinese American, with jet black hair and dark brown eyes. She's also tall, about 5'8", and very pale-skinned. Honestly, one of the first things I noticed about her when we met was her striking look. Tall, elegant, pale, with long black hair. She turned heads everywhere we went. Our kids are this interesting blend of us. Mason, our oldest, has light brown hair and these piercing green eyes. Caleb surprised us all by coming out blonde and blue-eyed, almost a mirror of me as a kid. Here's where the issue started. Ever since Caleb was born, Lily has been making comments about how lucky he is to have blonde hair and blue eyes. At first, I brushed it off. I figured she was just gushing over how different he looked compared to Mason. Parents say things, right? But it didn't stop. It became this running commentary. She'd say things like, "Oh, his blue eyes are so special," or, "Everyone always loves blonde babies. He'll always get so much attention." It was constant enough that I started to notice Mason listening in. Sometimes he's only 5, but kids aren't dumb. They pick up on this stuff. Now that Lily's pregnant again, she keeps saying things like, "Wouldn't it be great if this one also had blonde hair and blue eyes?" Or, "Imagine 3 little tow-headed boys running around. How cute would that be?" And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, but what if he doesn't? What if he looks like her? Isn't that just as special? Why is blonde and blue suddenly the holy grail of genetics in our house? Finally, last week, I snapped a little. She made another offhand comment about hoping the new baby looked like me again, and I said, "Honestly, I hope this one has dark hair and brown eyes. It'd be nice if he looked like you for once." Her face dropped immediately. She got defensive, saying I was twisting her words and acting like she didn't love both of our kids equally. She said I was overreacting, and that she never meant she preferred blonde hair and blue eyes. She was just pointing out how unusual it is. I didn't push it further in the moment, but it's been sitting with me ever since. Because here's the thing. I wasn't lying, I do think it would be cool if one of our boys came out looking more like Lily. Right now, they both carry more of my features, and yeah, I think they're beautiful. But I married Lily because I think she's beautiful too. I'd love to see her features shine through in at least one of our kids, but more than that, I'm worried about Mason. I always make sure to tell him how amazing he looks, how cool his green eyes are, how handsome his brown hair is. He's a gorgeous kid, and I never want him to feel like he's less special, just because his little brother got the blonde and blue combo. But if Lily keeps making these little comments, isn't Mason eventually going to internalize it? Kids are sensitive. He'll pick up that his mom thinks his brother won the genetic lottery or whatever. To be clear, I don't think Lily's intentionally trying to hurt anyone. She's not cruel. She adores both boys and is a wonderful mom. But she grew up in a culture that sometimes prizes lighter features, and I can't help but feel like some of that bias has crept into how she talks about our kids. And I'll admit, part of why I snapped was because I was trying to give her a taste of her own medicine. She didn't like hearing me flip the script and say I preferred the opposite. But doesn't that prove my point? If it stings when I say it, then surely it stings when she keeps saying it in the other direction, right? So now I'm stuck. I don't think I was cruel, but I also know my tone was sharp, and Lily is still a little icy with me about it, saying I made her feel like a bad mom when she was just being playful. I know people say choose your battles, but this feels like one of those battles worth addressing. Because words matter, especially around kids. Am I in the wrong for snapping at her? Or is this something I should have nipped in the bud a lot earlier before it became a pattern? Update. My wife keeps wishing our kids had my features, and I finally snapped, "Hey everyone, it's Ethan again." I wasn't sure I'd post an update, but a lot happened after I first wrote this, and it feels like I should. So after I posted, I read through a bunch of comments I didn't show Lily at first, And something that stuck with me was how many people pointed out that kids hear everything. Even if Lily never meant to hurt anyone, Mason was definitely old enough to internalize what she was saying. That honestly gave me a pit in my stomach. That night, after Mason went to bed, I sat down with Lily again. I told her flat out that I wasn't trying to attack her, but I needed her to hear how it sounded when she constantly talked about blonde hair and blue eyes. I told her that Mason is listening, and if he ever feels like he's less special than his brother, that would break me. She was quiet at first, defensive, but less sharp than the first time she said something like, "I just think it's rare and beautiful. I didn't mean it like that." And then she admitted something I wasn't expecting. When she was a kid, she grew up hearing that pale skin and light features were better. She grew up with relatives constantly telling her she was lucky to be tall and light-skinned, while her cousins were teased for being darker. She said she never thought. That mindset stuck with her, but maybe it had more than she realized. That hit me hard, because it reframed everything. It wasn't that she didn't value Mason or her own features, it's that she'd been conditioned since childhood to see certain traits as special, and without realizing it, she was passing that mindset down in her comments. We kept talking for a while. She started crying at one point, saying she didn't ever want Mason to feel unloved or less than. She even admitted that part of her commentary about blonde hair and blue eyes came from strangers. She said every time we go out, people stop us to comment on Caleb's eyes, and it feeds into this weird cycle where she keeps repeating it. That's when I realized this wasn't just about what she was saying at home. It was also about how other people react. Mason has noticed strangers fussing over his brother more, and Lily repeating those compliments probably made it sting. The next morning, Mason actually gave us a wake-up call without even realizing it. He was coloring at the kitchen table, and when I told him his drawing looked amazing, he grinned and said, "Yeah, but I don't have cool blue eyes like Caleb." My heart dropped. I glanced at Lily, and I could see on her face that the weight of what I'd been saying finally hit her. She sat down next to him, pulled him close, and said, "Mason, your eyes are my favorite thing in the world. They're green, like magic. And you know what? They're just like mine." Brown mixed with Daddy's blue made something extra special. Mason lit up. And honestly, that little moment did more for Lily's perspective than any argument we'd had. Since then, Lily has been making a real effort. She compliments Mason just as much as Caleb, but not in a fake or forced way. She's trying to be mindful of celebrating both kids for what makes them unique. We even made a silly family game out of pointing out family features. Mason's got my chin, Caleb's got Lily's nose, Mason's got her long fingers, Caleb's got my smile. It's turned into this fun, affirming thing instead of a competition. As for the new baby, Lily has actually stopped making comments about hoping he looks one way or another instead. She jokes about how she hopes he inherits none of Daddy's messy bedhead genes. She's shifted the focus from looks to personality quirks, which feels like a healthier direction. I won't lie. There are still moments when I catch her slipping, especially if someone out in public gushes over Caleb's blonde hair. But now, instead of staying quiet or repeating it, she pivots and says, "Yeah, Mason's eyes are stunning too, aren't they?" She's actively correcting herself, which is honestly all I could ask for. As for me, I apologized for the sharpness of how I snapped. Originally, I told her I wasn't sorry for the content of what I said, but I regretted the delivery. She said she understood now, and that she was glad I pushed back, because she really hadn't realized how ingrained those comments had become. So, I think we're in a better place, and I think Mason will benefit from us catching this early. TLDR, talked with Lily again, realized a lot of her commentary comes from internalized stuff she grew up with, and also outside compliments feeding into it. Mason accidentally proved my point by mentioning he doesn't have cool blue eyes. Lily had a wake-up call, apologized, and is actively shifting how she talks about both kids. Things are looking up. Final update. My wife kept wishing our kids had my features, and I snapped, "Hi, it's Ethan again. This will probably be my last update. Because our third little boy arrived last month, and I feel like the story has come full circle. We named him Lucas. He came out with a full head of jet black hair and the darkest brown eyes you've ever seen. From the moment the nurse handed him to us, I saw Lily's entire face soften. She whispered, He looks like me. And I don't think I'll ever forget how her voice cracked when she said it. It was like watching a light switch flip in her, all those years of subtle conditioning. The little offhand comments, the way she used to lean toward celebrating blonde and blue. It melted in that moment. She looked at Lucas like he was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen, and she didn't compare him to anyone she just kept, kissing his head and saying, "He's perfect." For me, it was surreal too. Holding Lucas, I realized how much I had secretly wanted one of our boys to resemble Lily more strongly. I'd always said I'd love them no matter what. And I meant it. But seeing Lucas looking so much like her really did feel special. It was like her family, her history, was stamped clearly on him. The sweetest part? Mason and Caleb adore him. Mason, especially, has stepped into big brother mode. The other day, he told Lily, "Lucas has your eyes, Mommy, and I have magic eyes like you too, but different." He was beaming when he said it. That single comment made me so grateful that we had those hard talks earlier, because Mason is walking into this new chapter feeling secure, not overshadowed to Caleb, being only one, mostly just points and says baby, but he tries to pat Lucas's hair sometimes a little too roughly. Lily always laughs and says, "Careful, you both have beautiful hair, but his is still tiny." It's become her way of balancing the compliments now. She doesn't just single out one trait. She spreads it around in small, affirming ways. There have been challenges, though. When friends and neighbors came over to meet Lucas, I braced myself. People love to comment on baby features, and sure enough, a couple of people immediately said, "Wow, two blondies and one who looks completely different." Normally that might have stung, but Lily jumped in before I could. She said, "Isn't it amazing how they each got their own mix? Mason has the coolest green eyes, Caleb has the brightest smile, and Lucas looks just like me." She said it with so much pride, it shut down any chance of comparison. Later that night, I told her how proud I was of the way she handled it. She admitted she'd been nervous about how others might react, but she'd been practicing flipping the script in her head so that none of the kids feel like they're on the wrong end of a compliment. That's growth, and I don't take it for granted. Our house is a circus now, of course. 3 boys under 6 is no joke. But what's changed is the way Lily talks about them. She points out little quirks in their personalities, not just their looks. She calls Mason our thoughtful artist, Caleb our wild comedian, and Lucas our dreamy little cuddle bug. Hearing her shift from features to traits makes me feel like we've truly moved past the old hang-up on a personal note. I've had to check myself too. Writing that first post, I was angry and sharper than I needed to be. If I had let that resentment fester, it could have really damaged things between Lily and me. But being honest, even if clumsy at first, forced us to have conversations we probably would have kept avoiding, and the payoff has been worth it. Now, when I look at my family, I don't just see 3 boys who got a random shuffle of genetics. I see Mason's curious mind, Caleb's mischievous grin, and Lucas's calm, observant eyes. I see Lily and me reflected in all of them, in different ways, and it feels balanced. So I guess the final takeaway is this. Kids don't need to look a certain way to be special, but they do need to feel celebrated exactly as they are. And sometimes, even the most well-meaning parents can accidentally create hierarchies without realizing it. I'm glad we caught ours early. Thanks to everyone who pushed me to think about Mason's perspective, and who encouraged me to talk to Lily instead of just stewing in frustration. It really changed things for the better. TLDR. Our 3rd son, Lucas, was born looking a lot like Lily, and it was a healing moment. Lily has shifted from focusing on features to celebrating each kid's unique traits. Mason feels secure, Caleb is thriving, and Lucas is the adored newcomer. Our family dynamic feels more balanced than ever. Stories number 2. Ada for not getting an ice cream machine with my girlfriend. This is a small issue, but I still wanted to get some opinions. My girlfriend, who I'll call Sam, and I have been dating for a few years now. We live together, and when we decide to buy an item for the house, we share the expenses on said item. 50 recently. A friend of ours has bought a new ice cream machine, and ever since seeing it, Sam has been asking to get one of our own, while I have been against buying one. First of all, we don't eat ice cream that often, even without the machine. In fact, I know that there is a cup full of ice cream in the freezer right now that has been sitting there unopened for quite some time now. That is not the only reason, however. When Sam sees something like this ice cream machine, she always hypes up how she would use it all the time and how this machine could change our lives, etc. But after the initial hype fades, she never looks at it again. The same thing happened when she wanted a new fancy coffee machine, an air fryer, a bread machine, and the list goes on. She convinces me that they would be good to have around, only for them to never be used again. I told her this, and she promised that this time would be different. But that was also what she said about the coffee machine. We are doing very well financially. And the thing costs, when converted to USD, around $500, which we can definitely afford. But then again, if no one will use it in the end, what's the point? So AETA for not contributing to buying the machine. Some of comments. Commenter 1. Elmao, you can buy an ice cream machine for $50, $100 if you splurge. $500 is insane. Reply. IKR, hear me out though. It can make ice cream, sorbet, and slushy. Commenter 2. NTA. If Sam wants to buy an ice cream machine that she won't use, then she 100% can. But leaning into consumerism just because a friend has one doesn't seem like the best option. Maybe suggest to her that the money could be better spent on something you'd both like, but if she's dead set on buying one, then she can absolutely do that with her own money. Reply. I don't think I've said this, but I have already told her that if she wanted it that much, she didn't need my permission to buy it. However, she still really wants me to contribute to buying this machine, like she pouts about it when I tell her that I wouldn't be contributing. I think she wants me to contribute because it's too big a commitment, and if she doesn't use it like I told her would happen, she has spent $500 while taking all the blame of spending the money onto herself. If I contribute now, I have also approved this item, and so we share the blame when it doesn't get used. Commenter 3 NTA, but you're really missing out by not using the air fryer more, especially in hot weather. It can be really useful, unlike an ice cream machine. Reply. I'll be sure to give the air fryer a second chance. Commenter 4. NAH. And it's nice to read about a situation on this sub that's relatively universal rather than something over the top. We all do this. It's totally fair to not want the machine, but it's understandable that your girlfriend wants it after seeing someone else's. Reply. Just wait till my air fryer divorces me and runs off with Sam update. Fuck the ice cream machine. No one cares about the ice cream machine. The air fryer, on the other hand, is absolutely a game changer. The first few times I've used it, everything came out undercooked because I was a dumbass and didn't know how to use the machine. Now that I've put my bigotry aside, I finally get it. The kitchen is not scorching hot, the potatoes are to die for, and the chicken is delicious. Thank you to everyone who convinced me to give this machine another try. Also, I've made my first batch of bread, and it most definitely tastes like bread. So I must have done something right. As for the ice cream machine, I bought Sam a less expensive model for now, and we'll see if we actually use it. It's been great for now, but it's still too early to tell. Literally no one asked for an update, but since the air fryer was your guys' suggestion, I thought I owed all of you a thank you. Some of comments. Commenter 1. Now look into a rice cooker. Simple but perfect rice every time and dirt cheap. Reply. My kitchen countertop. Commenter 2. I have never fucked an ice cream machine and ice cream though. Reply. I recommend the mint chocolate ice cream. An overall surprising experience. Stories number 3. My parents won't stop tracking me on Life 360. And I'm losing my mind. I'm a 19-year-old freshman who just moved into college a week ago. It's supposed to be this huge turning point in my life. New dorm, new city, new friends, new independence. But instead of feeling free, I feel like I've got two sets of eyes glued to me at all times, and not in a metaphorical, homesick parents kind of way. I mean literally, my parents check Life 360, like it's their second job. It started when I was 16. My mom, Karen, set it up on my phone after I'd just gotten my driver's license. She pitched it as a safety net. If I ever got stranded or had car trouble, she could find me. At first, I didn't really care. Most of my friends had it too, and it seemed harmless. But the thing is, my parents aren't the We'll only check if there's an emergency kind of parents. They're the refresh the app every half hour just to see where she is type. My dad, Mark, is quieter about it, but I'd catch him making little comments like, "So you stopped for coffee at Dunkin' on your way home?" Or, "Traffic on Route 22 must have been bad since you pulled into the driveway 10 minutes late." He'd say it like he was just making conversation, but it always made me hyper-aware that they knew everything. Oh, here's the real kicker. When I was packing for college last month, my mom joked, and I mean joked in that way where you know it's only half a joke, that I needed to keep Life 360 on because, if you end up in a ditch, I need to know which ditch to drag you out of. She laughed. I laughed. And that was that. I didn't think too much about it until I got here. Fast forward to my first week on campus. I'm standing in line at Target with a cart full of laundry detergent, ramen, and a pillow I probably don't need when my phone buzzes. It's a text from my mom. "Target again? You were just there yesterday." I froze. Like, okay, yes, I was at Target again because I forgot hangers. I'm adjusting to life away from home. But why does she need to call me out for that? Then the next day I get another message from her around lunchtime. "Oh, so you went to Chipotle without telling me? Hope you got extra guac." At first I laughed it off, but then it kept happening. Friday night I went with my roommate Jenna to a welcome mixer. Nothing crazy, just free pizza and awkward icebreakers. As we're walking back, I get a call from my dad. The first thing out of his mouth isn't "How are you? How was the mixer?" It's, "So who were you hanging out with at that student center for 2 hours?" I wanted to melt into the sidewalk. And here's the part that really got me. They've been pressuring me to go to church. I grew up in a religious household, and while I respect that, I've been figuring out what I believe I don't feel comfortable going every week, and I wanted college to be my space to explore that. But the last 2 Sundays, I didn't go. Guess who noticed? Mom. "Funny how your little dot on Life 360 didn't move towards St. Paul's this morning." I swear I could hear the disappointment dripping from her voice. It's gotten to the point where I feel this constant pit in my stomach. Even when I'm just walking to the library, I wonder, are they watching right now? Are they going to bring this up later? It's exhausting. Jenna caught me spiraling about it last night. She told me, "You know you can just delete the app, right?" And she's right, I could. But the thought of doing that makes me panic. Because if I turn it off without warning, my parents will immediately assume something's wrong. They'll blow up my phone, maybe even call campus security. And then I'll look like the villain who betrayed their trust. So I've been mulling it over. Part of me wants to sit them down and say, "Listen, I get that you want me to be safe, but I can't live like this. If you don't stop stalking my location, I'll turn off Life 360 completely." But another part of me feels guilty. They're my parents. They've supported me. They've paid for my tuition. They've been there through everything. I know in their minds, this is about love, about protecting me. What if I sound ungrateful? At the same time, though, I'm 19, I can legally vote, sign contracts, join the military. I'm supposed to be building my own life here. And instead I feel like a toddler with an invisible leash. I guess what I'm asking is, would I be out of line if I gave them that ultimatum? Because I can't tell if I'm being dramatic, or if this really is crossing the line into helicopter parenting gone way too far. Update, my parents won't stop tracking me on Life 360, and I'm losing my mind, so I finally sat down with my parents. Well, sat down, as in FaceTime, because they're back home in Ohio, and I'm here in North Carolina for school. But it felt like a showdown all the same. I'd been agonizing over this for days. Every time I opened Life 360 and saw that little location-checked notification, I felt my stomach drop. I couldn't focus on studying or even enjoy hanging out with my roommate, because in the back of my head was the thought, they know where I am right now. They're watching. So Sunday evening, I bit the bullet. I called them, both together, which already made my mom suspicious because normally I just call her. As soon as they answered, I said, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something serious." My dad leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, clearly preparing for drama. My mom tilted her head, doing that thing where she tries to look calm, but her eyes are already suspicious. I told them straight. I feel like Life 360 is stressing me out. I don't mind having it as a backup in case of emergencies, but I need you both to stop checking it constantly. If you can't respect that, I'll have to turn it off." My mom gasped. Like I had just announced I was joining a biker gang. Turn it off? Why would you ever need to turn it off if you have nothing to hide? That question right there. It made my blood boil. I said, "It's not about hiding anything, Mom. It's about privacy. I'm an adult now and I can't feel like I'm under surveillance 24/7. "I can't live like that," Dad finally chimed in, with his calm voice. Like he's the reasonable one. "Honey, we're just looking out for you. The world isn't safe. It gives us peace of mind to know you're okay." And here's where I kind of snapped. I said, "But what about my peace of mind? You want me to feel safe, but I feel the opposite. I feel trapped. I can't even go to Chipotle without you commenting on it. I can't even skip church without you bringing it up. Do you know how stressful that is?" There was a long silence. I could see my mom blinking rapidly, trying to find her footing. Then she went into guilt trip mode. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? By threatening to cut us off from knowing if you're alive or not." That stung, but I held my ground. "This isn't about cutting you off. I'll still call you. I'll still text. I'll still let you know if something's wrong. But if you keep using Life 360 to monitor me instead of just for emergencies, then yeah, I'm going to turn it off. I can't keep feeling like this, Jenna." My roommate was sitting on her bed listening to the whole thing with big eyes. I honestly think I only got through it because she was there giving me little thumbs ups. The conversation dragged on for nearly an hour. My dad eventually said he understood where I was coming from but thought I was being a little dramatic. My mom cried at one point. She kept repeating, "I just don't want to lose you." By the end, we came to a kind of uneasy truce. They agreed they'd try to stop checking so often, and I agreed to keep the app on for now. I told them I'd give it a couple of weeks, and if it kept feeling like surveillance, I'd delete it. I hung up feeling wrung out but also lighter. For the first time, I'd actually drawn a boundary with them. Here's the wild part, though. The very next morning, I got a text from my mom. "Saw you walked back from class late last night. Were you studying at the library?" I literally wanted to scream. I showed Jenna and she said, "That's it. They're never going to stop unless you force it. So now I'm stuck in this weird limbo. On one hand, I know they love me, and I don't want to cut them off completely. On the other, if I don't hold firm, nothing is ever going to change. I'm seriously considering turning it off this week, even if it means a nuclear-level fight. Because if college is supposed to be about learning independence, I can't spend the next 4 years worrying about whether my parents know I went to Taco Bell at 11 p.m. Final update, turning off Life 360, and living with the fallout." So I did it. After my last post, I gave my parents a couple of weeks to prove they could respect my boundaries. Spoiler, they couldn't. Every other day, I'd get some version of, "Why were you at Target so late? Did you really need to go to Starbucks twice today? Library again? You must have a lot of homework." At first, I tried to brush it off. I even reminded them gently, like, "Hey, remember what we talked about? This makes me uncomfortable." My dad would say, "We're just making conversation." And my mom would say, "I can't help it. It's a mother's instinct." But the point was, they weren't listening. The breaking point came on a Friday night. I went out with some people from my dorm, just to get pizza and wander around downtown. Nothing wild, but the next morning, I woke up to a wall of texts from my mom. "Why were you out so late? Who were you with? You're not drinking, right? Call me as soon as you see this." It was like I was 16 all over again, sneaking out past curfew. Except I wasn't sneaking. I was 19. In college, doing nothing wrong. I sat there staring at my phone and realized, this is never going to stop unless I stop it. So I texted my parents in the family group chat, "I'm turning off Life 360. I gave you 2 weeks to respect my boundaries, and you didn't. I'll still call and text and let you know I'm safe, but I'm not going to be tracked anymore. I love you, but this isn't working for me." Then I deleted the app. Within 5 minutes, my phone blew up. My mom called me 6 times in a row. When I didn't answer, she started sending crying emojis and, "Please don't do this. I'm terrified something will happen to you." My dad texted me separately and said, "You're being selfish. We only want to know you're safe." I finally called them back later that night. It was brutal. My mom was crying, saying she couldn't sleep, not knowing where I was. My dad was angry, saying I was making a rash decision. I just kept repeating, "I'm an adult. You don't need to know my every move to know I'm safe." It felt like I was talking to a wall. But after about 45 minutes of arguing, I told them, "This isn't up for debate, I'm telling you how it's going to be. If you can't handle that, then maybe you shouldn't call me every day." And then I ended the call for a few days. Things were tense. My mom sent me dramatic texts like, "I feel like I've lost my daughter," and "I'm so scared without knowing where you are." My dad didn't say much, just sent a thumbs up emoji to my good morning texts like he was mad. But then something shifted. Maybe they realized I wasn't budging. Maybe they realized they weren't actually entitled to constant surveillance, because by the end of the week, my mom texted me, "I hope you're doing okay, I miss you. Can we FaceTime soon?" And when we did FaceTime, the tone was totally different. Instead of interrogating me about where I'd been, she just asked how classes were going, if I liked the food in the dining hall, normal stuff. It's only been a few weeks, but honestly, I feel free for the first time. I walk around campus without thinking, "Oh God, they're going to see this on the map." I can go get boba at midnight or study until 2 a.m. without worrying about a guilt trip. My parents still call often, and I still text them daily, but the vibe is healthier. They don't have a digital leash on me anymore, and I think, slowly, they're learning how to have a relationship with me that isn't based on control. The biggest surprise? My dad actually admitted last week, "I guess this is part of letting go hard for us, but we'll get used to it." That felt like a huge step. So yeah, it was messy, and it hurt, and there were a lot of tears. But if anyone else is in the same boat, setting boundaries is worth it. My parents love me. They'll adjust, and I finally get to feel like the college student I'm supposed to be. Stories number 4. ATA for refusing to have children with my GF. Hey, everyone. I figured I'd give you a follow-up since you all wanted one, and my previous post gained a lot of attention. If you didn't read that post, basically my GF and I moved into an apartment complex 5 months ago. We have only been dating for 15 years. We're in our early 20s and don't have the time or finances for a child. And she wants children. I don't feel it's the right time for them, and her mother started getting involved. Over the last couple of days, there were a few more discussions between my ex and I regarding having children. The conversation went nowhere each time, and ended with her isolating herself on the other side of the apartment and not speaking to me. Yesterday morning I called her mother privately and asked if I could take her out for lunch, just the two of us, and talk. My ex was called in to work, and I had the day off. She agreed, and we did just that. She met me at a local diner, and it went completely opposite of how I thought it would. She tried to give me an ultimatum. She told me, "You can have children with my daughter, or she will find someone better to have them with." I told her I'm an adult and won't be given ultimatums, especially when I have her daughter and future grandchildren's best interest in mind. She said, "Have it your way then," and walked out of the diner. On my way home, I received a phone call from my ex telling me, "I'm at work and can't deal with this bullshit," and she couldn't believe I would disrespect her in front of her own mother, in a diner full of people, and that I owe her mother an apology. I was furious. Her mother fucking lied about our entire conversation and twisted it to make it seem like I was talking bad about her child. I tried explaining to her my ex that's not what happened at all, and that we can talk more about it when she gets home. When she did get home, she refused to believe me because her mother isn't the type to give ultimatums and just wants grandchildren. I told her, "Fuck that. You're giving me unneeded stress, and I'm done with this. You've let your mother into our relationship. You're both insanely manipulative, and we're done." And to take what she needs with her for the next few days to her parents, until we can arrange a day where she can take all of her stuff and move out. The apartment lease is in my name. Honestly, this sucks. I fucking can't believe in a week and a half of discussing about a child. We went from happy and rarely ever arguing to being split up and having her move out. I'm trying to remain positive. Maybe I'll get a cat so the place doesn't feel so empty. This fucking sucks. On the bright side, I have you all to vent to. So thanks, strangers, for being my therapist. You're not so bad until I rant again. Stories number 5. My M17 father M51 was suspended from church duties for honoring federal workers during announcements at church. I'm writing this because of a recent situation that led to my dad being suspended from duties in the church where he resided for over 10 years, and Dad told us I have 2 younger brothers during a family meeting last week. We didn't go to church this Sunday because of what happened too. My parents are leaders in our church, and leaders often do the post-worship announcements about church programs, upcoming events, before the tithe baskets are passed, and the pastor speaks. Our church is pretty big with 2 services, and the incident happened when Dad did the announcements last week. Announcements usually follow a pattern of briefing the congregation on events before asking all first-time visitors to stand and receive a brochure while being welcomed by the congregation. If there is anyone visibly wearing a military uniform or someone having alerted the church to the fact that their military relative was home for the week, they ask that person to stand, which usually results in a standing ovation. We didn't have anyone from the military last week, but my dad asked if any federal workers were present to have them stand before saying that God's in control and will never leave them no matter how bleak things seem, and he also thanked them for their service to our country. When Dad explained his motivation at our family meeting, he said he felt God put it on his heart to honor federal workers the same way our church honored medical workers during COVID once. Services resumed by having nurses stand for recognition. He also said he felt led to reassure them that they were appreciated amidst everything going on in the federal government. However, Dad was talked to by one of the assistant pastors during the week and was told that he shouldn't have done that. My dad disagrees because the main pastor often talks about letting the Lord dictate the service regardless of pre-made plans, and other leaders have followed that creed. For example, there are days when worship is really powerful, and the pastor will have the band sing a few more songs than originally planned, or have an impromptu altar call for something God puts on his heart. There are times when someone gives a prophetic word in tongues, a different language, that are also impromptu, and a leader will often elaborate on it afterward. Going back to Dad, he said he's been considering leaving the church for some time, and that now was perhaps God's timing. He also said the church has gotten too political in recent years, and he said that that played a part in what happened. The assistant pastor who informed him of the suspension told him that federal workers shouldn't be honored like nurses or veterans, because, unlike them, they can't do their jobs at home via telework and be lazy. He even said that honoring them was disrespectful to nurses, and my dad disagrees. Dad said he felt led to honor federal workers because many of them were being wrongfully villainized, but he was suspended from announcements for a few weeks. He also thinks the time is right to leave the church, but he wanted to talk to us because of the friends we had there, more so my younger brothers. He thinks they should be able to keep their friends similar to kids who have friends from other schools. Personally, I respect him for being open with us, and Mom agrees that the suspension was uncalled for. Dad is mostly stressed about being a deacon and wanting to step down before his term ends. He also said he's nervous about who to tell beforehand or not, and Mom said that they will work on it. He doesn't want to burn his bridges, but he doesn't know how to go about it. I know I don't have much of anything to contribute to how he steps down aside from supporting him, but I wanted to ask if anyone had any experience with stepping down or any ideas I could suggest. I would appreciate any that are given. First update. I really appreciate all of the perspectives given on my first post, and I shared some of them with my parents, including one in particular I'll highlight. My dad took a few days to pray over what he should do, and he learned something from one commenter who gave insight into something he didn't see. The comment said it could be dangerous for a federal employee to stand up and be identified in that manner, as OSPEC operational security is taught to federal workers, and especially in this current political climate. The comment also suggested the possibility of a crazy person potentially following them into the parking lot or home. Dad said he didn't consider that, and thought it was perhaps a reason why he was suspended. Although the assistant pastor never mentioned it, he eventually decided on meeting with the senior pastor to discuss the suspension, and we had another family meeting to discuss it shortly afterwards. During the meeting, Dad reiterated much of what the assistant pastor said, and how he disagreed with him, saying that federal workers shouldn't be mentioned in the same breath as nurses, veterans, because they can't telework and be lazy. But Dad also mentioned his mistake of potentially pressuring federal workers to stand, which could have put them in a very dangerous position, and asked if that had anything to do with the suspension. But the pastor told him that it had nothing to do with the suspension, and that he signed off on it before the assistant pastor told him. Long story short, he basically reiterated what the youth pastor said about how it's insulting to honor federal workers in the same breath as nurses, veterans. But when Dad pointed out what another comment informed us, how many federal workers were veterans and nurses and firefighters whom our church also honors from time to time, the pastor didn't change his tune. Dad explained how he felt. God told him to honor federal workers who were being unfairly villainized, but he didn't see it that way. After Dad told us how it went, Mom said they made the decision to stop attending. Immediately, because she believed that their handling of this was disrespectful, Dad's been in the church for over 10 years, currently serves as a deacon, and was once a trustee too. It is also hypocritical how other leaders are allowed to follow the Holy Spirit if God puts something on their heart, such as impromptu altar calls or going off on a tangent about something. Random God wants someone in the congregation to hear usually a very spot-on assessment, like someone proclaiming that a nurse in the congregation has a big life decision they're stressed about, or something. I told a few commenters that the same senior pastor used to have a thing about not talking politics, and would say that we are to pray for whoever is in office because God can use anyone for His glory. But ever since the current president began running for re-election, he slowly changed his tune and began promoting him during service, one of the many reasons Dad felt led to leave for a while. The senior pastor has served in our church for over 30 years, and his recent change has hurt Mom and Dad to see at the end of the meeting. Dad said that we'd take time off from attending church until they decided on some new ones to try. So that's pretty much it. But I wanted to address another thing that people mentioned regarding our church. I mentioned that our church often honors many people, and some said that that was off-putting. I mentioned this to Dad, and he actually agreed that some of it seemed contrived. If a couple has a milestone wedding anniversary coming up, they'll often tell the church during the week and ask to be recognized during service. So a leader will have them stand the same way they ask veterans if we see one in a uniform, or their family tells the church that their military relative will be there that Sunday, and the wedding anniversary requests personally sound a bit attention-seeking. Regarding veterans, the church once received a complaint from a veteran who didn't wear a uniform to church, but was blindsided when their family called the church during the week to ask him to stand by name to be recognized, and he said that he wouldn't attend anymore as a result because he just wanted to attend in peace. The church does the same for nurses and milestone birthdays, but they didn't stop following that complaint. As a matter of fact, the church continued with the tradition because the senior pastor said that the standing ovations for the veterans often brings up the energy in the service, and he compared it to how SeaWorld opened their One Ocean show with a tribute to veterans asking them to stand at the beginning. Dad disagreed and said God doesn't need artificial things to bring up the energy in the service, but the traditions continued nonetheless. That's just one of many things with this church, and Dad thinks now is the right time to leave. I appreciate the perspectives that were given, as it really helped us reflect on everything that happened. Second update. My parents and I have had some arguments since my last post, but I want to address something that was said in numerous DMs. A few people claiming to be Christians said they were happy. My father was suspended because he brought politics into the church. Others said a deacon may not have the authority to honor people as he did. Compared to other leaders regarding the first point about Dad honoring the federal workers, he said it was important to pray for those who are hurting. He also said that they were wrong to be villainized because Jesus had the heart of a volunteer, and federal workers were public servants. Jesus healed the sick and washed the disciples' feet without charge. Many federal workers could find higher-paying jobs in the private sector, according to Dad, but they chose to commit themselves to their communities instead. Regarding the second point, other deacons in our church do announcements too. The church has them do it along with other leadership positions so that the congregation can get to know its staff, and other deacons and trustees have honored veterans among others. With that said, my family stopped attending our church for 3 Sundays before one of the leaders reached out to my dad to see if everything was all right. Dad didn't tell anyone that we stopped going, but he told the leader who called that we were likely not going to return. That's how that call went, but he received another a few days later from a different leader who told him that the church wanted to honor our family for the years we gave as leaders, and Dad said he'd get back to him. Dad later told Mom and I about it, and he wants us to attend one more time so that they can honor us on stage and leave on a good note to not burn bridges. Personally, I strongly disagree. Dad has served on numerous boards for over 10 years, but they suspended him for doing something other deacons did. A deacon once asked police officers to stand during announcements in 2020 following the George Floyd events, claiming that people shouldn't generalize all police officers, and that Deacon was less seasoned than him. In my opinion, they spit in the face of our family by punishing him for something other deacons did. While I'm usually against ghosting, I wouldn't blame Dad if he decided to ignore their calls. But he said we should be grateful when people want to honor you. And when I disagreed, he said I should learn for my future work career because you don't want to burn bridges when departing jobs. But this isn't his day job. It's a church he owes nothing to. Respect is owed when it is given, in my opinion, and the church doesn't give him a paycheck. He said I don't have a choice but to attend one final Sunday to leave on good terms. And if worst comes to worst, it's only 2 hours, but I strongly disagree because, in my opinion, he's giving more respect than they're giving him. And maybe the church is doing it to save face, who knows? Maybe I'm just being young and stupid, but I don't think it's worth it to cause a rift over a 2-hour final service I'll likely attend. But I hate everything about it. Just one more thing, Dad said. He thinks God put it on his heart to honor the federal workers so that this would happen and facilitate us leaving the church. He said he should have left years ago when the church ignored complaints from veterans who didn't want to be honored and used them as props to bring up the energy in the service, as the pastor said, and he ignored a feeling in his gut to leave when the church began getting more political. The church has mentioned Trump from the stage numerous times, but he said he was too afraid to leave a community. He resided for over 10 years despite hating everything Trump stands for. So while we left too late, we can at least leave now. New update. I completely forgot to return to this sooner, but a few messages from individuals wanting to know what happened reminded me. Despite numerous discussions about how I thought returning to the church was a bad idea, they decided to go. Anyway, I disagreed because we left on our terms, and the church wanted us to leave on theirs. Their disrespect towards my father with the suspension shows what little respect they had for his 10+ years of service. But Dad said we shouldn't burn bridges, and compared it to not burning bridges when leaving a job. In my opinion, that comparison doesn't work because, unlike a job, the church doesn't give him a paycheck. Unlike a job, you don't need a reference when going to a new church. But Dad said he wanted to leave on good terms in case God opened the door to return someday. And I disagree with that wholeheartedly. If you leave a toxic ex or church in this case, you shouldn't leave expecting to return someday if you're unable to find someone better to settle down with. It reeks of insecurity, in my opinion, and I think it's really weak too, to my dad's credit. He came around on not forcing me to attend the final Sunday. When he'd be honored, I stayed home. And when they returned, Dad didn't want to talk about what happened, and said I shouldn't care because I wasn't there. From his tone, I figured he was bothered, and Mom opened up to me about it instead. She said he wasn't thrilled with the questions he received from friends, congregation members following the service, and I think that was poor foresight on his part. She said it annoyed him, but regarding the service, the two of them were asked to come on stage for no more than 5 minutes to be recognized by the church, as one of the pastors thanked them for their years of service. It's important to note that my father was told beforehand that he wasn't required to speak during the honoring, so he was never asked to speak during it. The honoring ended with a pastor praying over them, and that was pretty much it. In the months since, my parents have attended a few local churches, but have yet to pick one as their new home. They said I didn't have to join them for their search because, at my age, I'll likely leave for school in a year or so it'd be up to me to find a church for myself. I appreciate them letting me be myself. But I've since debated a lot since we left. One thing that surprised me as a result of making these posts was people saying how crazy I was to mention speaking in tongues so nonchalantly. And honestly, I didn't think twice about it. Our old church was Pentecostal, and they've had people speaking in tongues since I was young. I used to internally question how someone would interpret a tongue with no language or incomprehensible babble, as someone who messaged me described it, and be able to understand it correctly. or how many times someone might have intentionally misinterpreted the babble to whatever they wanted to say that had nothing to do with God at all. And the more I thought about it after reading many messages, there seemed to be no checks and balances at all. Who regulates when random people yell babble, and then someone always has the correct interpretation moments after, what if two people plan to do it in advance to push a personal agenda disguised as God's word? But worse than that, I don't want to be looked at as if I'm crazy for mentioning tongues in public, which would never come up outside of church. So I'm glad that I got made fun of in DMs instead of real life for something I always thought was normal. However, it's really shaken me of late and made me want to take a break from Christianity as I prepare for college. I'm angry that something so stupid like tongues could seem perfectly normal if indoctrinated from a young age. And it made me wonder how many other things regarding Christianity I've been wrong about too. Going back to what I said about no checks and balances regarding tongues, it seems to be a microcosm of everything wrong with Christianity and the Christians in our country at the moment. People proclaiming to hear from God to push personal agenda under the guise of Christianity, and Christians eating it up the tongues. Interpretations often followed by applause in our old church without any vetting. That screams Christian nationalism to me. A bunch of indoctrinated people who grew up thinking unnormal things were normal, like tongues and following Blindy without second thought. I don't want to be stupid, so I'm taking a break from Christianity to hopefully go to faraway college to see life for myself. But I feel, deep down, that I won't return to Christianity ever since the tongues thing, because I'm now questioning what else I've been wrongfully believing. So since we're no longer at our old church, I won't post again because that chapter is closed for me, although I fully expect my parents to return someday, since Dad already talked about it before he left. Stories number 6. Went on one date with guy and talked for less than a month. 2 hours. Before our planned second date, he sends this. Enjoy. Before reading, keep in mind, we are the exact same age, me late 20s female. Dude, late 20s male, I'm autistic, disabled, I sing classically, I teach at a local college, and am overall a massive nerd. In our few weeks of talking, we only really talked about fun things like anime, D&D, and just goofing around. I had only met him once in person. And so other than he was fun to talk to a potential new friend, I didn't know much about him or him me. It wasn't a deep romantic connection. Am Demi, so it takes a long time for me to get there anyways. Anywho, after an awkward time trying to settle when our second date would be red flags, we agreed to meet up at the local zoo. 2 hours before, however, I looked down at my phone after I finished my shower, and I see this, P.S. If the boys could do a dramatic reading on the show, it would make my life because this is something out of a CW show. The text reads as follows. Hey, I'm going to have to rain check with you on our date. In fact, we're going to have to stop. On all of our future dates, I wanted to tell you this in person face to face, but now after thinking on it some, it may be easier and more considerate for both of us if I just say this in text. I don't think we're the right fit for each other. See, if he had stopped here, I'd be like, that's fine. Have a good life and had no problem, it's what comes. Next, I didn't want to be disingenuous and do this, but after talking with a friend, I realized it was wrong to lead you on, even if our date was still going to be fun. And don't get me wrong, I like you, I really do. But I don't feel it would be right to continue pursuing a romantic relationship with you. Don't ask me why. I don't want to hurt your feelings any more than I already have, if I have. As far as I can tell, you are a good person, and I shouldn't have waited until the last minute. If this is the last time we communicate with each other, I just want to say, thank you for being who you are, and what you've done during our time together. You are probably one of the smartest, honest women I've ever met in my entire life. Don't stop being you, keep trying as I will, and you'll find your person one day. Trust in God, pray in Jesus' name, and once again, I'm sorry for wasting your time like this. Hope for the best for you. And don't let this stop you from your acting, singing, and taking care of your health. I know you have goals you want to reach, and you're still young. I know this is bittersweet. But if I somehow find out that you're not doing well after our one date, I will be genuinely angry with you and will not hesitate to scold. Yup, that was something he wrote. Once again, thank you for the feelings. Goodbye. God bless your beautiful soul. And goodbye. But it's not goodbye because there's more. Also, I won't be outright cutting you off unless you want to do that with me. So if you'd like to remain friends, I'm open to it. In the coveted words of John Mulaney. Now, we don't have time to unpack all of that, but I'm quite amused I told my sister that if he had hung out with me just to give me that script I probably would have slapped him edit. Not literally, but I would have had the strong desire, her perfect response was that, if she somehow found out I had slapped him after that one script, she would not be very angry and would definitely not hesitate scold me. Suffice to say he is blocked, but not before I skillfully killed him with kindness, with a much shorter text message. Edit. Look, I really enjoyed talking and nerding out about stuff, and I would have gladly stayed your friend had you had the courage to actually talk to me. The people I want as friends will be honest with me, and not give the excuse of trying to spare my feelings. I am a disabled, autistic woman, and I know aspects of this aren't for everyone. This whole message along with its timing just feels very infantilizing. But I am thankful you had some forethought in not dragging me there, just to say this script in person. I will continue to learn and grow and be more confident in myself, as I have come so far already. But you will not be part of that journey in any capacity. For the sake of future, current friends, let this be a learning point. God bless you and have fun. Storming the castle. The most heinous part of this whole thing is I was denied a zoo adventure, LOL. However, I have plans in the works to venture out and seek the animals sometime soon, with friends who will be much better company than that would have been. Stories. Number 7. AITA for being cold and uncaring to my autistic sister, because I know autism isn't the reason she's awful to be around. I 6TM have a sister, 14F, who's autistic. She was diagnosed at 3 years old, and our parents have ignored 90% of the professional advice they were given. They also used her diagnosis to excuse all the bad stuff she does, and when kids don't want to be her friend or parents don't want her around their kids, they call them ableist and say it's discriminating against her for being disabled. She's allowed to throw food, steal food off other people's plates, disrupt dinner, and eat dessert before actual dinner. And when those things aren't allowed, she throws tantrums and screams and kicks and acts like a toddler. Sometimes we stay with our aunt or our grandparents, and she acts like that. One time she spat chewed food into Grandma's mouth because Grandma was saying she couldn't take food off my plate. Another time she spat at me for stopping her, and then she threw her mashed potatoes at Grandpa because he told her to stop. Both times Mom and Dad were angry at me and my grandparents for not going along with what she wanted, because she's autistic. If we're shopping, and she wants to wander, I'm expected to follow her and reach for stuff for her. But she doesn't have to ask. She can just tell me to do it, and if I say no, she tells our parents and they get mad at me. My sister has stomped on my foot for not reaching for the stuff she wanted. She does get overstimulated sometimes, and I get being quieter when that happens and let her unwind. But sometimes she goes into a complete meltdown and can hit and break shit. Mom let her play on my Switch during lockdown while I had schoolwork, and she overstimulated herself and broke it. Then Mom got mad at me because I said someone needed to replace it and stop her using my stuff in future. My sister got mad at me for keeping her from other stuff I had, and she ran to Mom and Dad to use it. She doesn't get invited to birthday parties anymore, because she used to hate waiting for kids to open their gifts, and she'd start opening them herself, and then she'd get mad if she couldn't take home the stuff she'd like. Or there were parties with bounce houses where she wanted the bounce house to herself, because she didn't want other kids touching her, and she tried to push or bounce other kids out of the bounce house. She put her hands all over food at birthday parties too, and slobbered over an entire pizza at one because she didn't want to share it with others. She has an IEP for school, but our parents expect that to be a get-out-of-jail-free card for her. They think it lets her get away with doing whatever the hell she wants, and everyone has to just deal with it. In school, she has no friends, and my parents are mad because we have lunch at the same time, and we're in the same school again, and I refuse to eat lunch with her or check in on her. At home, I don't talk to her, and if she talks to me, I'm pretty rude to her face. She's always rude, violent, and mean to me, so I won't be anything but cold back. I'm past the point where I care about her feelings or what she needs. If she was arrested tomorrow for hitting someone, I'd be happy and celebrate. My parents told me I should be nicer too. My sister and they complain about how cold and uncaring I am toward her. She was upset last Tuesday because someone called her names and I said nothing to her. When she cried, I actually rolled my eyes because she says mean shit all the time, but autism is meant to be an excuse for it. One of my friends is autistic. There are 2 other students in my grade who have autism, and I have known them since kindergarten. They all have differences, but nothing like her. At least not all the time. It's worked on. They get better at talking to people and apologize if they hurt someone. My sister never does. My parents don't care about that though, and they think I'm TA. My sister does too because she hates that. I refuse to hug her when she asks now, and I don't say I love you or anything nice to her. Stories number 8. My way of handling baby questions. Backfired. I'm 23. My name's Emily, and here's the deal. I'm infertile and also happily child-free. I've known since I was a teenager that kids aren't for me. That clarity has honestly been one of the most freeing parts of my life. Like when other people were dreaming about weddings and baby showers in high school, I was sketching out travel plans and deciding what city I'd move to after college. But if you've ever been a woman in the US who dares to say out loud that you don't want kids, you already know what comes next. The questions, the judgment, the raised eyebrows, the whole, "Oh, you'll change your mind" script that everyone apparently memorized in church basements or something. It's relentless. My first memory of it was at 18, at a family barbecue in Wisconsin. My Aunt Carol leaned across the picnic table with her potato salad and said, "So Emily, when do you think you'll start your family?" I was barely legal, still wearing a prom bracelet, and here she was talking about nurseries and strollers. I laughed and said, "Oh, I don't think kids are for me." And instead of dropping it, Carol went full missionary mode. Every woman says that at your age, you'll feel differently when your body clock kicks in. The entire table nodded like she was preaching gospel truth. That was when I realized honesty wasn't working. Saying I don't want kids just led to debates, pitying looks, lectures, and sometimes straight-up arguments. People acted like my uterus was a community project, like I was personally insulting them by not reproducing. So when I was 20, after one too many exhausting conversations, I decided to try something different. See, I've known since I was 14 that I'm infertile. Not probably infertile, not it'll be hard to conceive. Straight up, medically infertile. It was a tough pill to swallow back then, but as I grew into myself, it became almost a relief I had a biological exit pass from baby talk, and it aligned with what I wanted anyway. So the next time someone pushed me on it, I leaned in. At a holiday dinner, my cousin Megan chirped, "When are you and Ryan going to start trying?" Ryan's my boyfriend of 2 years, 25 annum, for context. I felt my patience snap. So instead of launching into my usual "I don't want kids" speech, I let my face fall, made my voice shaky, and said, "Actually, I can't have kids, I'm infertile." Then I looked down at my lap like I was holding back tears. Y'all, the silence that hit that dining room was like a bomb went off. Megan's face drained of color. My uncle immediately changed the subject to the Packers game. Nobody said another word about babies the entire night. And honestly, I felt like I'd just discovered a cheat code. Since then, whenever acquaintances, co-workers, or random nosy strangers cross the line with, "So when are you having kids?" I roll out my performance. Sad eyes, choked voice. A whisper of heartbreak. Boom. End of conversation. It worked beautifully. People would backpedal, apologize, and drop it. I thought I'd finally solved my problem. But recently it backfired. A few weeks ago, I was out with some friends. Ryan, plus 2 of my best girlfriends, Sarah, 24F, and Jessica, 25F. We were at this bar in Milwaukee, drinking $5 cocktails, and I mentioned in passing how I'd shut down some guy at work who asked if I was pregnancy planning yet. I told them about my go-to infertility act and how it was way easier than arguing. Sarah's face went dead serious. She goes, "Emily, you can't do that. That's really messed up." I was caught off guard. Like, messed up how? She explained that faking pain about infertility disrespects people who actually struggle with it and suffer through failed rounds of IVF and miscarriages. You're basically trivializing their grief for your convenience. she said. Jessica agreed, saying her sister struggled with infertility for years, and it nearly destroyed her marriage. If she heard you pulling that card for convenience, she'd be livid. Ryan just kind of sat there awkwardly, sipping his beer. Later, he told me he sees both sides. He gets why I'm tired of being harassed, but he also sees why people might find it offensive. Now I'm in this weird guilt spiral. On one hand, I'm actually infertile. I'm not lying about the fact. The only part I'm exaggerating is the emotional heartbreak. For me, infertility isn't devastating. It's neutral or even convenient because I never wanted kids anyway. But I lean into fake sadness because it makes people stop asking. On the other hand, I can admit it's manipulative. And I guess if someone overheard me, like an actual infertile woman who's mourning miscarriages or failed treatments, it would look horrible. So now I don't know. Am I just being clever, using the cards I was dealt? Or am I being cruel by pretending to be devastated when I'm not? I keep replaying Sarah's words. You don't know how lucky you are that your infertility lines up with what you want. Don't mock the pain of people who'd give anything to have what you take for granted. That hit me hard. At the same time, I still feel like I don't owe anyone explanations about my reproductive choices. And it is exhausting having to justify I don't want kids to every aunt, coworker, and random person in line at Costco. So, yeah, that's my dilemma. I don't know if I've crossed into asshole territory, or if I'm just protecting my peace update. My infertility act and what happened after? Hey again, it's Emily. I didn't think I'd be back so soon, but wow. Things escalated. Faster than I thought after my original post. I kept turning over what Sarah and Jessica said in my head. At first, I wanted to brush it off. I told myself, they're being too sensitive, I'm not hurting anyone. But late at night, lying in bed, I kept hearing Sarah's voice. You don't know how lucky you are that your infertility lines up with what you want. And it bothered me because she was right. The first real test came 2 weekends ago. My boyfriend Ryan and I drove up to Green Bay for my cousin Ashley's baby shower. These things are always torture for me. Not because I dislike kids, I'm actually great with them. I just don't want them myself. But because showers seem to bring out the absolute worst in family interrogation squads. Sure enough, within 10 minutes of arriving, I was cornered by my Aunt Carol. Yes, potato salad. Carol. She had that gleam in her eye like she'd been waiting all year for me. So Emily, she started. You're next, right? When are we celebrating yours? Old me would have pulled out the sad eyes, shaky voice, and infertility monologue easy out. But I remembered Sarah's face that night at the bar, and I forced myself to try something different. So I straightened my back and said, Actually, I don't want kids, I never have. Carol blinked like I'd just confessed to a crime. Then she laughed. Oh, honey, everyone says that at 23. Give it a few years. Once Ryan puts a ring on it, you'll change your mind. My jaw clenched. I wanted to scream, but I took a deep breath and said, Carol, I've been saying the same thing since I was 14. It's not a phase. It's who I am. She smirked and leaned closer. You'll see. Then she walked off like she'd just won some argument. I didn't know we were having. And here's the kicker. The rest of the shower wasn't that bad. Yeah, a few other relatives asked, but I shut them down with the same calm, direct line. I don't want kids. No theatrics, no fake heartbreak. Just truth. Did it end the conversations as fast as my old trick? Nope. Some people pressed harder. Some gave me the pity look. But at least I wasn't pretending anymore. And honestly, that felt kind of good. The real curveball came later that night. After the shower, Ryan and I stayed at my parents' place. My mom, Susan, pulled me aside in the kitchen. While she was doing dishes, she goes, Emily, I heard what you told Carol today. Are you really serious about not wanting kids? My stomach dropped. My mom and I have danced around this topic for years, but I've never laid it out that bluntly. I nodded. Yeah, Mom, I don't want them. I've never wanted them. She dried her hands and sat down at the table with me. For the first time, she didn't argue. She didn't give me the whole, you'll change your mind speech. She just looked sad. I always pictured you as a mom, she said quietly. I pictured grandkids. It's hard to let go of that dream. That gutted me. Not because I felt guilty, But because it was the most honest she'd ever been about her feelings, I reached over and said, "I get that, and I love you. But this is my life. I need you to accept me as I am." We both teared up a little, but it was the first real conversation we've had on the subject. Not a debate, not a performance. Just truth. Since then, I've decided to retire my little act. I'm not going to fake heartbreak anymore. It worked as a shield, but it also made me feel like I was hiding. And if people are going to judge me, I'd rather they judge me for who I actually am than some made-up version. Funny enough, when I told Sarah and Jessica about the baby shower, they both hugged me and said they were proud. Ryan admitted later that it was nice not having to watch me pretend anymore. He said, "I love you exactly as you are. If people can't deal with it, that's their problem. So yeah, it's still uncomfortable. People still don't get it. But I'm realizing I don't need to win these conversations. I just need to stand in my truth. And maybe that's scarier than faking sadness. But it feels a hell of a lot better." Final update. Owning my truth. Once and for all, hi again. It's Emily. I think this will be my last post about this whole infertility act situation. Because in the past month I've had the kind of wake-up call that forces you to either stand tall or fold, and I've decided I'm done folding after my last post. I was feeling pretty good about being honest. It was harder, sure, but it felt more real. Then came Thanksgiving. And let me tell you, Thanksgiving with Ryan's family made my baby shower showdown with Aunt Carol look like a warm-up act Ryan's parents Linda and Mark hosted. And they're sweet people, but they're very traditional, think Hallmark movie family, small-town Wisconsin. Vibes. Ryan has 2 sisters, one with 3 kids already, another who's pregnant. And the whole house was baby central high chairs, toys everywhere, kids screaming. The works. I was doing fine until dessert, when Ryan's mom suddenly looked right at me across the table and said, "So Emily, when do we get to hear some news from you two?" The room went dead quiet. Everyone was waiting for my answer. Old me would have launched into the infertility heartbreak routine. I could practically hear the script in my head. Choked voice, averted eyes, pretend to fight back tears. Boom, sympathy. Conversation over, but instead, I put down my fork and said, "Actually, Linda, I don't want kids. I never have. So there won't be any baby news from me." You could hear a pin drop. Ryan squeezed my hand under the table, but his sister Jennifer actually gasped. Linda looked like she just swallowed a lemon. She stammered, "Oh, well, you're still young. People change their minds." And for the first time ever, I didn't just let that line slide. I said, "With respect, I've been saying this since I was 14. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm child-free. I'm happy. I hope you can accept that." Jennifer whispered something under her breath, and Mark cleared his throat like he wanted to change the subject. But Linda? She just sat there, blinking, looking completely thrown off. The rest of dinner was awkward. Like, painfully awkward. Ryan and I ended up leaving a little earlier than planned. In the car, I apologized to him for making things tense, and he shook his head. "No, don't apologize. You were honest. That's what matters." The fallout came the next day. Linda called Ryan and said she was concerned about me, that I was going through a phase, or maybe rebelling. Ryan, bless him, shut her down. He told her he supported me completely, that he knew I'd been consistent about this for years, and that it wasn't up for debate. I thought it would end there, but it didn't. A week later, at my job's holiday party, one of my coworkers who knows about my infertility, but not about my stance on kids, asked when Ryan and I were going to start trying. Normally, I'd pull the infertility card out of habit, but instead I said, "We're not. I don't want kids." She looked shocked, and then, here's the wild part, another coworker, Janice, actually chimed in and said, "Good for you. People act like it's everyone's job to have kids. It's not." And then 2 other coworkers nodded and started sharing how much pressure they get from their families. That was the moment I realized I'm not alone. I'd been playing defense for so long that I didn't notice there are actually other people quietly going through the same battles. And by speaking up, I made space for them too. So here's where I'm at now. I'm officially done pretending to be heartbroken about infertility. It was my shield for years, but now it feels like a cage. My family still doesn't get it, but my mom and I have actually started having calmer, more real conversations about expectations, Versus reality, Ryan has made it clear that he loves me as I am, and doesn't need kids to validate our future. That man deserves a medal. Linda still side-eyes me, but I figure she'll either come around or she won't. That's on her, not me. The biggest thing I've learned is this: people will project their dreams, fears, and insecurities onto you no matter what. You can either let them walk all over you, or you can stand firm in your truth. It's scarier, it's lonelier at times, but it's also freeing as hell. So no more fake tears, no more performance. If you ask me about kids, you'll get the truth. And if the truth makes you uncomfortable, that's not my problem anymore, and honestly, for the first time, I feel proud of myself. Stories number 9. My stepson wants to eat meat, but my wife forbids it. I'm Mark 42M, and I've been married to my wife, Jessica 39F, for 3 years. We both came into this marriage as single parents. I have one son, Ethan 15M, and she has 2 kids, her oldest, Caleb 14M, and her youngest, Lily 9F. From the beginning, there were obvious cultural and lifestyle differences between us, but nothing that felt insurmountable. One of the biggest differences? Jessica is a strict vegetarian and was raising her kids vegetarian from birth. I, on the other hand, grew up in a pretty standard Midwest meat and potatoes household. Steak on Sundays, burgers on the grill in summer, turkey at Thanksgiving, the usual. When Jessica and I got serious, we talked about food early on. She was clear that she'd prefer to keep raising Caleb and Lily vegetarian, and I agreed. I figured, her kids, her rules. Meanwhile, Ethan, who had always eaten meat with me, would continue doing so. I didn't see it as a hill to die on. After the wedding, something interesting happened. Ethan voluntarily decided to become vegetarian too. He saw the way Jessica cooked, learned about the ethical side, and told me he wanted to give it a shot. I was surprised, but honestly fine with it. Food shopping and meals got easier because suddenly everyone was on the same page. That lasted until last week. Caleb, my stepson, came home from hanging out with some friends. They'd been at a local diner, and one of the kids ordered chicken tenders. Caleb confessed to me privately later that he'd been craving meat for a while, but had never said anything because he knew how his mom would react. He told me point blank, "Mark, I don't want to be vegetarian anymore. I want to eat meat." I wasn't shocked. Kids get older, their tastes change, and they start forming their own identities. I told him I appreciated his honesty, and that I'd support him if that's what he wanted. I figured Jessica would be upset but reasonable. Kind of like I was when Ethan switched sides. I was wrong when I brought it up to Jessica that night. She shut it down immediately. Not just in a "I don't like that idea" way, but in a "this will never happen" way. She said Caleb had been vegetarian his whole life, that his body couldn't handle meat, and that introducing it now would make him sick. I tried to approach it gently. I suggested starting small, like chicken broth or bone broth, to see how his body reacted. I wasn't pushing for burgers and ribs overnight, just acknowledging that Caleb was asking for something different and deserved the chance to explore it. Jessica got furious. She told me under no circumstances were her kids going to eat meat, and that this was not my decision to make. She accused me of trying to undermine her parenting, of disrespecting her values, and even of poisoning Caleb's mind. That's when things blew up. I pointed out that she had no problem when Ethan gave up meat, even though he was raised on it his entire life. That was his choice, and she supported it. But Caleb wanting to add meat into his diet? Suddenly it wasn't about choice anymore. It was about Jessica's moral code. I said, "So basically your lifestyle is morally correct, and mine isn't. That's what this is really about, right?" She snapped back that I was being an ass. The truth is, Caleb keeps bringing it up to me privately. He tells me he's curious about bacon, burgers, even just basic stuff like chicken nuggets. He feels like he's missing out when he's at friends' houses, and he resents that his mom won't even let him try. He's at that age where forbidden fruit just makes things more tempting. Meanwhile, Jessica is doubling down. She told me point blank that she expects me to stay out of it, and that Caleb is her son. So it's her call? That stung. I may not be Caleb's biological dad, but I love the kid, and I'm trying to parent him fairly. To me, this is about autonomy. If Ethan could choose vegetarianism at 13, Why can't Caleb choose to eat meat at 14? The house has been tense ever since Caleb has been sulking around. Ethan's caught in the middle. He feels guilty for choosing vegetarianism when Caleb wants the opposite. And Jessica and I have been avoiding the subject altogether to prevent more fights, but here's the thing. I can't stop thinking about it. I know the smart part of me should probably drop it, keep the peace, and let Jessica deal with her own kids how she sees fit. But the stubborn part of me wants to stand up for Caleb, because I know what it feels like to have your choices dismissed by a parent. So I'm stuck wondering, if I push this issue, if I insist that Caleb be allowed to eat meat, am I crossing the line? Because right now, it feels like the real fight isn't about food at all. It's about whether Caleb gets to have a say in his own life, or whether Jessica's beliefs override everything. And honestly, I don't know how long I can keep biting my tongue, so things escalated faster than I expected. A few days after our argument, Caleb came to me quietly while I was helping Ethan with homework. He looked hesitant, like he was scared I'd tell Jessica Mark. "I went to my friend Dylan's house yesterday," he said, fiddling with his sleeve. "They had burgers and I ate one." I raised my eyebrows. "And how did it feel?" "Good, but also scary," he admitted. "I didn't want Mom to know." I nodded, trying to stay calm. "Okay, I get it. You're curious and you're making your own choices, but sneaking around isn't ideal either. Let's figure out a way for you to try what you want safely without hiding it and without disrespecting your mom." He looked relieved, but at the same time worried. I promised him I wouldn't tell Jessica yet, but I'd support him in finding a compromise. The next day, Jessica noticed Caleb acting a little quieter at breakfast. She asked what was wrong, and he just shrugged. Jessica turned to me with that half smile she gets when she knows something is off. The one that always precedes a lecture. "Mark, don't let him talk you into this," she said firmly. "It's my house, my rules for my kids." I kept my tone calm, but I felt my patience start to thin. "I'm not talking him into anything, Jessica. He's expressing his curiosity. All I'm saying is, we need to help him navigate it without making him feel like he has to sneak around." She scoffed. "You think just because you parented Ethan differently you get to override me?" "It's not about overriding you," I replied. "It's about letting him make an informed choice. Ethan wanted to stop eating meat. We supported him. Caleb wants to try it. Shouldn't he get the same respect?" The tension in the kitchen was palpable. Lily, who had been quietly eating her cereal, looked up and said, "Can I try a chicken nugget too?" That broke the moment a little, and Jessica rolled her eyes. I could see the gears turning in her head, and I knew she was trying to figure out how to shut this down without losing face. I suggested we sit down as a family that evening. Caleb, Ethan, Jessica, and I, just the four of us. I proposed a compromise. Caleb could try small amounts of meat in controlled settings, maybe once or twice a week, and we'd track how he felt physically and emotionally. Jessica was resistant, but she agreed to hear me out. During the discussion, Caleb spoke up for himself, which surprised me. "I just want to know what it's like," he said earnestly. "I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to decide for myself." Jessica sighed. "Mark, you're really pushing this," she said, clearly frustrated. "I just don't want him to make a mistake." I leaned in, keeping my voice even. "Jessica, I get that. But he's 14. Part of growing up is making mistakes, learning from them. If we don't give him a chance, he'll either rebel secretly or feel like his opinions don't matter." By the end of the conversation, she wasn't thrilled, but she agreed to let Caleb try a small piece of chicken at dinner the next night. It was a tiny victory, but one that felt huge for Caleb. His eyes lit up when I whispered, "See? Your voice matters." That night, Caleb cautiously took a bite of chicken. Jessica watched like a hawk, arms crossed, but he was fine. He smiled at me. Relieved, I smiled back, feeling like maybe we were starting to find common ground. Ethan, bless him, was supportive too. "It's just food, man, you'll figure it out," he said, nudging Caleb after dinner. Jessica and I had a long conversation in private. I acknowledged that I was pushing boundaries, but I also reminded her that Caleb's curiosity wasn't a reflection on her parenting. It was part of him growing up. She admitted she felt like her authority was being challenged, and I promised to support her while still respecting Caleb's autonomy. We didn't resolve everything, but at least we had a plan going forward. Small steps, monitoring how Caleb reacted, and keeping communication open. No sneaking around. No ultimatums. I know this isn't the end of the road. I can see future challenges with meals, holidays, and friends' houses. But for now, it feels like progress. Caleb feels heard. Jessica feels respected. And I'm learning how to navigate the delicate balance between step-parenting and respecting my wife's rules. Over the next few weeks, things settled into a surprising rhythm. Caleb cautiously explored, eating meat, starting with small bites during dinners we had at home. Jessica watched him closely at first, her arms often crossed, but gradually she began to relax. She'd even comment occasionally like, "Okay, try a little more," or "Don't eat too fast," showing a mix of concern and cautious acceptance. Ethan, true to his supportive self, became Caleb's informal guide. He'd explain textures, flavors, and even joke. "See? It's not a dragon you have to slay." Caleb laughed at that, and I could tell he felt more confident with Ethan's encouragement. One weekend, we had a small family gathering with both our kids. Jessica prepared vegetarian options for herself and the kids, and I made a separate tray with simple meat options for Caleb and me. The first few bites were tentative. Caleb looked around nervously, waiting for Jessica's reaction. When she saw him enjoying it, she didn't say anything negative. Just a small, "all right," which felt like a huge win. I also made sure to keep open conversations with Jessica. I'd check in privately. "Are you okay with how this is going? Or do you feel I'm overstepping?" She admitted a few times that she was still uneasy, but she also acknowledged Caleb's need to make his own choices. It wasn't instant acceptance, but at least the communication lines were open. One night, while cooking dinner, Caleb looked up at me and said, "Thanks for letting me try this stuff. I feel like I get to make my own decisions now." My heart swelled. I told him, "Of course, bud. It's your body, your choice, and you get to figure out what works for you," Jessica overheard. And later that evening, she and I talked quietly. She admitted she worried about Caleb's health, how his body might react after years of being vegetarian, but she also admitted she had never fully considered how important it was for him to feel in control. We agreed to keep monitoring his diet, making sure he's eating balanced meals, and to revisit if any concerns arise over time. Caleb grew more confident. He even asked to help cook meals that included both vegetarian and meat options. Ethan continued to support him, teasing him gently, and celebrating small milestones like trying new foods or cooking his first piece of chicken without hesitation. By the time Thanksgiving rolled around, we had found a workable balance. Caleb proudly ate a small turkey slice, while Jessica enjoyed her vegetarian plate. He smiled at me across the table, and I smiled back. It felt like a victory for him, for our blended family, and for the delicate dance of respecting parental boundaries while supporting a child's autonomy. Jessica and I had learned something important too. Compromise doesn't mean giving up authority. It means creating space for the kids to grow and feel heard while maintaining structure and guidance. The tension didn't disappear entirely, but it eased significantly. Caleb felt empowered, Ethan felt validated, and Jessica felt like her concerns were respected. In the end, we discovered that blended families thrive not when parents win arguments, but when kids feel safe to explore, make mistakes, and learn, while parents continue to communicate openly and supportively. By the new year, Caleb's diet had become routine. He enjoyed both vegetarian and meat meals. Jessica was no longer anxious about him, and our household felt calmer and more cooperative. The journey wasn't easy, but it strengthened our family bonds in ways I hadn't expected. Stories. Number 10. My parents want to move into my house after years of telling me I'd never make it on my own. I'm 29F, and last year I did something I never thought I'd be able to do. I bought my first home. It's a modest 2-bedroom ranch in a little Midwestern town. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I worked 2 jobs for almost 6 years to save up for the down payment, lived in crappy apartments, skipped vacations, and drove the same old Honda Civic until the wheels practically fell off. This house means everything to me because it represents freedom. It represents proving wrong every single voice that told me I couldn't do it. And the loudest of those voices were my parents, growing up. My parents, let's call them Mark 62M and Linda 60F, were not supportive people. They constantly told me I was lazy and too soft to ever handle adulthood. If I got an A, they asked why it wasn't an A+. If I got a job, they asked, how long before I got fired? Anytime I expressed excitement about something, they'd cut it down. When I was 18 and said I wanted to move out, my dad laughed in my face and said, "You'll be crawling back in 6 months." My mom chimed in with, "Sweetie, some people just aren't cut out for independence and that's okay." But the tone wasn't comforting. It was dismissive, like she'd already written me off. I did move out at 20. But it wasn't easy. I had to work in retail and waitressing to afford rent while trying to finish community college. My parents never once helped me, not even with advice. If anything, they enjoyed sitting back and saying, "Told you so," when things got tough. So when I finally signed the paperwork for my house last year, I was beyond proud. My boyfriend, Ryan 31M, was there with me, cheering me on, telling me how hard I'd worked for it. I remember calling my parents that night to share the news. I was hoping, maybe foolishly, that they'd finally be proud. Instead, my dad literally chuckled and said, "We'll see how long you can keep that up before the bank takes it." My mom said, "Don't get too comfortable. Houses are money pits. You'll be calling us for help in no time." That stung. Ryan overheard the call and was furious on my behalf. But I brushed it off. I told myself it didn't matter what they thought anymore. Fast forward to this year. My dad lost his job at the factory he's worked at for decades. My mom never worked outside the home and doesn't have any income. They've racked up a lot of debt, and now their landlord is selling the house they rent. They're basically out of options. So what do? Call me suddenly. The daughter who would never make it on her own is the one they want to rely on. They asked if they could move into my house temporarily while they figure things out. My first instinct was panic. I have a 2-bedroom place. One is mine and Ryan's. The other is our office guest room. There's no space for 2 more adults to live here comfortably. But beyond that, the thought of living under the same roof as them again makes my chest tighten. Because here's the thing. They haven't changed. Even in the same conversation where they asked for help, my dad made a snide remark like, "Guess we were wrong about you being able to handle bills. Good for you, kid." It was meant as a compliment, but it dripped with condescension. My mom said, "See, it all worked out for the best. We raised you to be strong enough to take care of us one day." That last part floored me because no, they did not raise me to be strong. They tore me down at every chance, and I had to claw my way into stability in spite of them, not because of them. Now my siblings, I have an older brother, Josh 35M, and a younger sister, Emily 27F, are weighing in. Josh has a big house with a finished basement, but he says he can't disrupt his kids' lives by letting our parents move in. Emily rents with 2 roommates in a small apartment, so she says it's obviously impossible for her. So guess who they all think should step up? Yep, me. Because I'm the one doing well. Emily actually said to me, "You have no kids, just a boyfriend, and a whole house. It makes the most sense for them to go with you," Josh told me. "It's your duty as their daughter. They gave you life. The least you can do is give them a roof." Ryan is firmly against it. He said, "This is our home. We've worked too hard to make it peaceful. Bringing them in would destroy that." He's right. Even just imagining my dad's sarcastic remarks at breakfast or my mom critiquing how I fold laundry makes me want to scream. And yet, I feel guilty. They're my parents. They're scared and struggling. A part of me feels like saying no makes me cold-hearted. Another part of me feels like saying yes would undo years of healing and independence. I don't know how to reconcile that, so, Reddit, here I am. On one hand, family obligation, guilt, the fear of being judged by my siblings as selfish. On the other hand, my mental health, my relationship with Ryan, the sanctity of the home I worked so hard for. I keep circling back to the fact that they never believed in me, never helped me, and honestly seem to enjoy watching me fail. Now that I've built something, they want to benefit from it. If I tell them no, am I being heartless? Or am I finally standing up for myself in a way I should have years ago? Because I can't shake this thought. If the roles were reversed, if I had lost everything and needed a place to crash, they would never have opened their doors to me. And yet, the guilt lingers. Update: my parents want to move into my house after years of telling me I'd never make it on my own. Hey Reddit, I wasn't sure I'd post an update, but so many of you asked, and honestly writing it out helps me process. So after I posted, I spent about a week sitting with the situation before I gave my parents a final answer. During that time, things got messy. My brother Josh and my sister Emily kept texting me almost daily, pushing me to do the right thing. Emily even sent me a long message that said, "Mom and Dad aren't perfect, but none of us would be here without them. You're the one in the best position, so why are you being so selfish?" That hit hard, but it also made me furious, because in my head, I was screaming, where were Mom and Dad when I was barely scraping by? Ryan, my boyfriend, was patient but firm. One night after another long guilt trip call from Emily, he sat me down and said, "You can't let them bulldoze you just because they're family. We worked for this home. It's supposed to be our safe place. Do you really want to invite back the people who made you feel like garbage for most of your life?" That snapped something in me. I realized I was about to throw away my peace for people who never cared about protecting mine, so I called my parents and told them no. I rehearsed it about a dozen times, but when I finally said it, it came out shaky but clear. "Mom, Dad, I can't have you move in. This house is not big enough, and it would be too stressful for me and Ryan. I'm sorry you're going through this, but the answer is no." There was a long silence. Then my dad said, "Wow, after everything we've done for you, this is the thanks we get?" That almost broke me. But then I remembered everything they've done included years of belittling me, dismissing me, and making me doubt myself. My mom started crying, saying I was abandoning them. My dad went straight into anger. "Fine, don't come crying to us when life knocks you down. You'll regret this." I didn't yell back, I just said, "I hope you figure things out, goodbye." And I hung up. The fallout was immediate. Emily blew up my phone, saying I was heartless. Josh called me selfish Ryan, and I had to block them both for a few days because it was relentless. But here's the thing. A week later, I found out through a mutual family friend that my parents ended up moving in with Josh after all. Turns out his "I can't disrupt my kids' lives" excuse went out the window once they actually had nowhere else to go. He cleared out the basement and set them up there. Do you know what that means? All that pressure, all that guilt, all those words about duty. It was never about me being the only option. It was about me being the easiest option. Emily has gone quiet. Josh hasn't apologized, but he also hasn't mentioned it again. My parents haven't spoken to me since the phone call. And you know what? I feel lighter. Guilty sometimes. Yes, but mostly free. Ryan and I sit in our living room and it feels like ours. No tension, no biting remarks from my dad, no passive-aggressive sighs from my mom. Just us. I don't know if my relationship with my parents will ever recover. Maybe it won't. But I do know this. I didn't work my ass off for nearly a decade just to hand over my peace of mind to the same people who told me I'd never get here in the first place. I finally chose myself. And honestly, that feels damn good. Final update. My parents wanted to move into my house after years of telling me I'd never make it on my own. Hi again. Reddit. It's been about 6 months since I first posted, and a lot has happened. I figured I'd give you all the final update because so many of you have stuck with me through this roller coaster. After the big blow-up, I went low contact with my entire family for a while. I needed space to breathe. Ryan and I focused on building routines in the house, fixing up the backyard, and actually enjoying our home. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't walking on eggshells. Meanwhile, my parents ended up staying with Josh. At first, it sounded like it was going okay. My dad set up a little workshop in the garage, and my mom tried to help out with Josh's kids, but cracks started showing pretty quickly. Josh's wife, Melissa, apparently has way less tolerance for my parents' behavior than I ever did. My mom made a couple of snide comments about her cooking and how things were run in their house, and Melissa nipped it right in the bud. Then my dad started doing the same microwave beep trick he always used to pull, the one where he leaves food inside until someone else fetches it, and Melissa told him flat out, "This isn't a restaurant. Get it yourself or don't eat." Let's just say my parents didn't love that. The last I heard, Josh is seriously regretting volunteering himself as the dutiful child. He called me a few weeks ago, sounding completely exhausted, and said, "I don't know how you dealt with them all those years." For the first time, I didn't feel like the selfish one in the family. I told him, gently, "You always had the option not to remember that." As for Emily, she's been distant. At first she acted like I had destroyed the family by refusing. But when she saw what Josh was going through, I think she started rethinking things. We had a coffee meetup last month where she admitted, "I judged you too quickly. You were right to set boundaries." It wasn't an apology exactly, but it was as close as I'll ever get. My parents still don't talk to me. I thought I'd be crushed by that, but instead, it's just quiet, peaceful. I used to crave their approval so badly that I would twist myself in knots trying to earn it. Now I see that I'll probably never get it. And I'm learning to be okay with that. On the brighter side, Ryan and I are thriving. We've made this little house into a home. We planted a garden in the spring, hosted a few friends for BBQs in the summer, and even adopted a goofy rescue dog who follows us everywhere, every night. When I curl up in bed without tension in my shoulders, I feel grateful that I didn't give in. Here's the wild part. A few weeks ago, I was in line at the grocery store, and I ran into one of my old teachers from high school. She remembered me, asked how I was doing, and when I told her I'd bought a house and was doing well, she just smiled and said, "I always knew you'd prove them wrong." I almost cried right there in the checkout line. So that's where I'll leave it. My parents made their choices, and I made mine. For once, I chose myself. It doesn't mean I don't love them in my own complicated way, but love doesn't mean sacrificing your peace to relive old wounds. And if anyone reading this needs to hear it, it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. Especially with family. This is the happiest I've ever been. Stories. Number 11. She kept blocking my garage because she felt she didn't expect this to blow up. But the reason LaCrystal didn't park in front of her own garage was because the building was old, with old garage doors that extended out before going upward. The door would have hit her car, which wasn't even hers. It belonged to Uber. If she moved further away, she would have been blocking the narrow alley that barely had enough room for one car to drive through. I no longer lived there, but she did something else dumb right before I left. The building had a no-pet policy. Well, she got a Yorkie because she's above the rules. Maintenance entered her apartment one day for some scheduled work. They informed all the tenants about ahead of time. The dog freaked out and bolted out. The door, when the men entered, it ran out into the street and was hit by a car. Sadly, it didn't make it. She blamed property management because it wasn't her dog and she was watching it for a friend. Wherever she is now, I'm sure she's blaming someone else for her transgressions. Years ago, I moved into an apartment with individual garages in the alley behind the building. The building had 10 units, 8 studios, and 2 one-bedroom apartments. I had a one-bedroom. The day I was moving in, I met LaCrystal. She lived in one of the studios on the opposite end of the building, and she immediately informed me, I park there, referring to in front of my garage. Parking is scarce in that area, and street sweeping is done at odd hours, like 3:30 a.m. So when people find a spot, they don't move until they absolutely have to. They'll Uber places instead of driving. I asked why she didn't park in her own garage, and she stated she had an old broke-down car in her garage already. I told her that she needed to find another parking spot as I leave for work most days at 4 a.m. She then gives me her phone number and just says, "Call me and I'll move." I'm already thinking of all the work I have to do moving in and setting up, so I just say okay as to not ruffle any new neighbor's feathers, and I just didn't feel like arguing with someone. 5 minutes within moving in, calling her to move her car started out okay but quickly turned into a pain. There were times I'd call her, and 10 minutes later I was still waiting. I'd call again only to be screamed at with a, "I told you I was coming." Damn! It didn't stop there. There would be times I'd come home at night and couldn't get in because she blocked my garage. It got to a point that I asked her to stop. She wouldn't. The owner of the property was a buddy and client of mine, so I eventually told him about it. He then posted signs on the property saying that parking in front of garages would result in the vehicle being towed. Well, one night I came home with my GF, and she was in front of my garage. I called her 3 times, and she sent it to voicemail each time I walked up to her unit, and heard her inside talking crap about me calling her no problem. I called the tow truck and had her car towed. I left my girlfriend in my place the next morning while I went to work for a few hours. She called me and said La Crystal was standing outside my window on her phone talking loudly. Some batch SSNA who think he's something because he lives in a one-bedroom got my car towed for no reason because he's a buck, is what I was told she said. When I got home, La Crystal was standing in the courtyard with a devilish grin on her face. She greeted me with a, "Hello, neighbor," like I was supposed to be scared of her. I said hello back and went inside. She got on her phone and called someone and continued to talk about me, saying I owe her $300 and I better pay it if I want to keep breathing. The next day she had a guy, I'm assuming her man, come over to intimidate me. Now I'm 6'4", 215 lbs. This guy was 6'5", 250 bs at least. For the next week, anytime I walked outside, he would just come out and give me a menacing stare. I stared back, but no words were ever exchanged. Well, I didn't pay her jack and she got towed again a few days later for parking in front of someone else's garage. This time the owner, my buddy, drove by and saw her car and called it in. She was towed at least 2 times after that, along with a buddy she had parked in front of someone else's garage. Of course she thought I had something to do with it. Stories number 12, Eta for snapping at my husband for constantly asking obvious questions and making our lives harder. My husband has this constant habit of asking questions or doing things that feel like common sense should cover. It's not once in a while. It's all day, every day. Examples. Do you think I'll be tired if I only sleep 4 hours? Or, should I bring a jacket? When it's obviously cold, he'll even repeat the same questions after I've already answered them before. The latest one. He asked me for about the 6th time if a large milkshake was bad for him. He's an adult, educated, lactose intolerant, and fully aware sugar isn't health food. I finally snapped and said, "Stop asking me things you already know the answer to, use common sense." He got upset and said I was being rude, that he just likes asking questions, and that if I don't want to answer, I should just politely refuse instead of biting his head off. Then he followed up with, "But why is it bad?" And I felt like I was losing my mind, but it's not just the milkshake. The day before, we came back from a trip. Our small entryway was already packed with luggage. I asked him 3 separate times not to bring up a bunch of bulky packages until we had cleared space. Our building has a package room, where they could have easily stayed for another day without being a problem. He ignored me and brought them all up anyway, which made the chaos worse and added almost an hour of unnecessary unpacking. Meanwhile, we had arranged care for our dog so we could settle the apartment quickly, and he wasted a big chunk of that time on something that could have waited. And this isn't new. Before we lived together, he was late to work nearly every day because he stayed out until 2-3 a.m. with friends. He eventually got fired. Then he spent about 6 months unemployed, making no real effort to find a job, racking up credit card debt, and spending thousands on hobbies. I was the one nagging him to get up, apply, and manage himself, which I know wasn't pleasant for him, but it felt like I had no choice while he was sabotaging himself. His friends encouraged him to live life however he wanted, and painted me as controlling for expecting him to act like an adult. So this is the pattern. He ignores boundaries, makes avoidable messes, or asks me to explain the obvious. I hold it together for a while, but every 4th or 5th time, I explode for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then he gets moody, sulks, and turns it around on me. So instead of just cooling off, I end up having to manage his feelings on top of the original frustration. What could have been a 10-minute annoyance always becomes an hours-long ordeal. I'll admit I do snap. But I also feel like I've been forced into the role of his common-sense filter, financial guardrail, and emotional regulator. And when I finally lose my patience, I get cast as the villain Ita for snapping. TL. Dr. Husband constantly asks obvious questions like, if a large milkshake is bad for him, and even why it's bad, ignores clear requests like, don't bring up packages yet, and has a history of being irresponsible with work and money. I snap after the build-up, and then he sulks, so I have to comfort him. He says I'm rude. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Stories number 13. My husband's friend demanded we replace her sunglasses and phone after our baby broke them. So here's a story that blew up into way more drama than I ever expected. And I'm honestly still trying to figure out if I'm crazy for thinking the way I do. I'm 28F. My husband is 32M. And we have a 6-month-old baby boy. Obviously, he's still in that stage where literally everything goes into his hands. Glasses, hair, jewelry, phones, you name it. If it's in grabbing distance, he's going to latch onto it like his life depends on it. We warn people constantly, because as funny as it can be when he's tugging at Dad's beard, it can also cause chaos. So last week, one of my friends, let's call her Jean, 33F, came over to visit Jean, and I go way back, and she's always been kind of flashy with her stuff. Designer bags, luxury sunglasses, the newest iPhone before anyone else has even heard of it. I don't say that as a dig. It's just who she is. She likes nice things and makes sure everyone notices. Jean was super eager to hold the baby, that's fine. I don't mind sharing, but I always give people the same warning. Hey, just so you know, he's a grabber. Might want to take your sunglasses off or tuck your phone away. I said that as soon as she reached for him, because she had these giant Gucci sunglasses perched on her head like a headband. I kid you not, she rolled her eyes at me and laughed. You're so protective, you don't want me to hog your baby? I kind of laughed it off, but repeated, seriously, he'll grab them, he's quick. She brushed me off with a little wave and said, it's fine, I've got him. So there she is, holding my son, cooing at him, bouncing him around, all good. At first, then she decides she wants to take a selfie with him. I don't have an issue with that, as long as it doesn't go online. I've been very clear about that boundary, but she pulls out her iPhone 16, of course it's the brand new one, and props it up to snap a picture. Well, that was basically my son's cue. He reaches up, grabs her Gucci sunglasses right off her head, and just like I warned, he's thrilled. He's waving them around, squealing, super excited that he caught something. In the middle of this, Jean shrieks, which startles him. And when I say shrieks, I mean full-volume horror movie level screaming. The scream scares him. He flails, and boom! Her sunglasses go flying one way. Her iPhone goes flying the other. The phone hits the hardwood floor. She immediately yells, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" Meanwhile, my poor baby is crying his little lungs out because he's terrified now. My first instinct was to take him back and calm him down. Jean, on the other hand, was freaking out about her stuff. She picks up the sunglasses and they're scratched. On the lenses, maybe even a little bent. Then she sees her phone has a big crack across the screen. She turns to me, absolutely furious, and says, "You need to replace these, both of them. This is over 2,000 pounds worth of damage." Thought she was joking at first, but nope, dead serious. She actually said I should either buy her a new iPhone 16 or give her the money for it, plus the $800 sunglasses. Altogether, she wanted about $2,300. I just stared at her and finally said, "Jean, I literally warned you. Twice you ignored me." She starts going on about how it's just common courtesy and your baby is your responsibility, and that she should have been able to hold him without worrying about her things getting destroyed. I told her flat out, we can't pay that. That's not even my monthly wage right now. I'm on maternity leave. But also, I don't feel like I should. You ignored my warnings. She called me heartless. She said I wasn't being understanding of how upsetting it was to have her property damaged. And sure, I get being upset. I'd be upset if my stuff got broken too. But I wouldn't have ignored 2 warnings about it. At this point, my husband comes in. He's not as emotional as I am, and he just kind of shrugged and said, "She warned you, what did you expect?" Jean left after that, still fuming. She's been blowing up my phone since, sending me long messages about how irresponsible we are, how people can't even hold our baby without something going wrong, and how we've ruined an expensive phone and sunglasses without even offering to make it right. Now here's where I'm struggling. I feel guilty, not because I think I owe her the money, but because she was once a close friend and now it feels like our relationship is completely shattered. Part of me wonders if I should have at least offered something, even if it wasn't the full amount. Like, maybe I could have paid for a screen repair or something, but the bigger part of me is like, why should I? She literally ignored my warnings. My husband is standing firm. Not our fault, not our problem. He says Jean is being entitled and unreasonable. I want to agree, but the guilt is eating at me, especially since my siblings and even a couple of mutual friends have said, well, technically it was your kid who caused the damage. I don't know, am I really heartless here? Or is this just a case of someone not wanting to take responsibility for their own choices? Update. My husband's friend demanded we replace her sunglasses and phone. Our baby broke. Wow. I did not expect my post to blow up the way it did. I read through so many of your comments, and honestly, it helped me feel a lot less crazy. Thank you. To everyone who reassured me that I wasn't being unreasonable, a lot has happened since I posted, so buckle up. The aftermath of Jean's meltdown. The day after I wrote the original post, Jean sent me this ridiculously long text message, like 3 full screens worth, basically listing out her itemized damages. She included a link to Gucci's site for the sunglasses and a screenshot from Apple showing the cost of the iPhone 16. At the end of the message, she gave me a deadline of 2 weeks to send her the money before she considered legal options. I almost laughed when I read it because it felt so over the top, but at the same time, I felt this pit in my stomach. What if she actually did try to take us to small claims court? My husband, Chris, was completely unfazed. He read the message, shook his head, and said, "Let her try. No judge in the world is going to make parents pay thousands of pounds because a 6-month-old grabbed something after we warned her. He's right, of course, but I'm a worrier, and I don't like conflict." The group chat explosion. Things got messier because Jean decided to bring the whole drama into our friend group chat. She dropped a massive rant in there, basically painting me as careless and irresponsible, saying I let my baby destroy her property and then refused to take accountability. Of course, she left out the part where I warned her twice. Most people stayed quiet at first, but eventually a couple of our mutual friends chimed in. One guy, Mike, said, "Jean, babies grab stuff. You've known that since day one. She warned you. That's on you." Another friend, Tara, backed him up and said, "Honestly, you screaming like that is probably what scared the baby. If you'd just taken the sunglasses off like she told you, this wouldn't even be a thing." Jean lost it. She started attacking them too, calling everyone unsupportive and fake friends. Then she left the group chat altogether. The legal options, remember her threat? Well, she actually followed through. About a week later, I got a formal-looking letter in the mail. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was one of those fill-in-the-blank templates people can buy online for small claims notices. She had filled it out. With her claim for $2,300 in damages, Chris nearly fell off the couch laughing when I showed him. He said, "This is the pettiest thing I've ever seen. I hope she actually files it. I want to see the judge's face." For a couple of days, I was stressed. I even called a legal advice line to see if we had anything to worry about. The lawyer I spoke to said flat out, "She doesn't have a case. She assumed the risk when she ignored your warnings. If anything, the court would view her behavior as negligence, not yours." That gave me a huge sense of relief. The confrontation. This past weekend, Jean showed up unannounced at our house. I opened the door with the baby in my arms, and she immediately launched into this spiel about how she just wants closure, but also still expects me to pay. Chris stepped in at that point and said, very calmly, "Jean, we're not giving you a penny. You ignored warnings, your stuff got broken, that's on you. If you want to take us to court, go ahead. Otherwise, stop harassing my wife." John started crying, like full-on sobbing, and said, "We'd ruined her financially." I asked how, because she has a well-paying job and no kids. She admitted the phone and sunglasses were on credit, and she was already struggling with the payments. That's when it all clicked. She wasn't really expecting us to replace her things. She wanted us to bail her out of debt. I didn't say anything at the time, but it changed how I felt about the whole situation. This wasn't about my baby. It wasn't about responsibility. It was about her making reckless financial choices and wanting someone else to cover them. Where we stand now. Told her firmly that we would not be paying and that she needed to stop contacting us. Chris blocked her number on his phone. I haven't blocked her yet, but I muted her messages. In the last couple of days, she's tried guilt-tripping me with messages like, "I thought we were friends. Friends help each other in times of need, but I'm standing firm now. She ignored my warnings, scared my baby, and then tried to shake us down for money. That's not friendship. I don't think she'll actually go through with small claims court, especially since she'd have to pay a filing fee she probably can't afford. But if she does, I'll be ready. Honestly, I'm just sad. This whole thing made me realize that the friendship was more shallow than I thought. And I'm grateful for Chris, because he's been such a rock through this whole ordeal, so yeah, that's where we're at. No sunglasses, no new phone, and no more Jean in our lives' final update. Husband's friend demanded we replace her sunglasses and phone our baby broke. It's been about 6 weeks since my last update, and I promised myself I'd come back here one more time to close the loop. A lot of you asked for the courtroom drama ending, and, well, you got it. Jean actually filed in small claims. I genuinely didn't think she'd go through with it. But sure enough, about 3 weeks after her meltdown at our doorstep, we got official notice in the mail. Jean had filed a claim for $2,300 against us. Her claim listed damages to personal property caused by negligence. She even attached evidence, a photo of the broken sunglasses, her Apple receipt, and screenshots of our group chat where she painted me as dismissive. Chris was over the moon. He kept joking. Finally, free entertainment. Meanwhile, I was a ball of nerves. I've never stepped foot in a courtroom, and the idea of being sued, even in small claims, had me losing sleep. Preparing for court, we contacted the same legal advice line as before. The lawyer told us the best defense would be simple. We gave clear warnings. She knowingly ignored those warnings. She assumed the risk when she held the baby with fragile items in hand. A 6-month-old baby is not legally capable of negligence, the lawyer even laughed when we told her the amount Jean was asking for. She said, "The judge will toss this out faster than you can blink." So we prepared our evidence. Texts where I warned her, "Best take your sunglasses off." Group chat messages, where others confirmed I'd warned her, and even a short video Chris had taken a week prior of our son grabbing his glasses. Proof that this was a normal baby behavior we were actively trying to redirect. Court day. The hearing was surreal. Small claims court is nothing like TV. It was, basically a meeting room with a judge at the head of the table. Jean showed up in a designer coat, carrying a giant folder of papers. She looked smug, like she thought she had this in the bag. She went first, passionately describing how reckless I was, how I let my baby cause chaos, and how I showed zero remorse for the damage. She even threw in a jab about how responsible mothers don't let their babies wave things around. When it was my turn, I calmly explained what happened, emphasized the warnings I gave, and handed over my evidence. Chris also testified, backing me up word for word. The judge listened quietly, asked a few clarifying questions, and then delivered the verdict. Case dismissed. He told John, point blank, "You assumed the risk when you disregarded her warnings. This is not negligence. This is poor judgment on your part." I swear. I almost cried with relief. The fallout. Jean did not take the loss gracefully. She stormed out of the room, before the judge even finished his sentence, muttering under her breath. Later that night, she posted a rant on Facebook, calling me a toxic friend, and accusing me of turning everyone against her. That backfired spectacularly. A bunch of our mutual friends commented publicly, reminding her that she was warned and that suing over sunglasses and a phone was ridiculous. Eventually, she deleted her post, but not before blocking me, Chris, and half the friend group. As far as I know, she's cut herself off from most of us. Tara told me Jean's been hanging out with a new crowd lately and still complaining about being betrayed. Honestly, good riddance. Where we are now, Chris and I are doing great. Our son is now 7 months old, still in his grabby phase, but we're working on redirecting him gently. The whole ordeal weirdly brought me and Chris closer together. We learned that, when push comes to shove, we really do have each other's backs. I won't lie. Part of me still feels a little sad Jean and I were friends for years, and to see it end like this is heavy. But I also see it as a blessing in disguise. A real friend wouldn't scream at a baby, demand thousands of pounds, and try to drag you to court over their own poor choices. So yeah, final verdict, no sunglasses, no phone, no Jean. And for the first time since all this started, I feel at peace, thanks to everyone who encouraged me to stand my ground. You were right. I wasn't heartless. I was just refusing to be bullied.